Well, dear Dr. Joe Evans, it's an honor to be with you today. And you're part of the board of directors of Prenatal Alliance, but we want to know more about you. These ideals of Prenatal Alliance, they're dear to your heart and have been for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Sure. I think the way I see them and the way I would summarize them is that we have to approach pregnancy, both the fetus in the womb, the mother, her partner, the father of the baby, the family as it expands, almost like the bullseye, layer by layer by layer, and respect the fact that there's consciousness there.
Oh,
And if we can do that, then everything else follows. Because where there's consciousness, there's an appreciation of taking care of this conscious being. And how do you care for spiritual growth that's occurring? How do we care for or maximize the infusion of the divine into this little fetus?
yeah.
And the support that's required, both emotionally, physically, and spiritually, in order to maximize that process. That's really what prenatal alliance and prenatal consciousness means to me.
But Joe, it's the way we consider small things. It's as if they were not that important. How can one cell, a first cell that will become a baby a few months later, how can that be so crucially important? And would you allow matter, I mean, cell, have consciousness? How do you see that from your point of view?
Well, everyone that I speak to um, gives me a different opportunity to explain that concept or to answer that question, because everyone has their own set of personal beliefs. So in terms of the first question that you asked me about the importance of a single cell, I say, well, let's use a negative example like cancer, which we know starts from a single cell.
True.
And we know how important it is to make sure that we stop this process as soon as, first of all, prevent it from happening. But once there's a single cell, we know how it can ultimately take over a human body. And so if it can happen in that negative way, we can understand how the importance of a single cell happens in the positive way in forming a new human being. And so I start there. And as far as the infusion of consciousness goes, that's something that people have individual perceptions about when does quote unquote life start. And unfortunately, that gets entangled in the right to life or pregnancy termination conversation. And it really shouldn't be. People should be allowed to believe whatever they want to believe. And I like to believe that as soon as we recognize the consciousness of this fetus, even if we do it prenatally by welcoming the child to come in through conception, what we would call a preconception, ceremony or consciousness, that at least understand the benefits through how it changes the wiring of the nervous system of the mother.
This is
And
this is
and that is so important for optimizing conception and optimizing the growth of this fetus, who actually responds to the stress hormones and stress chemicals that the mom has through her body. So if it's helpful for the mom to welcome this baby and converse with this baby and pray with this baby and talk to this baby, that sets her nervous system in a way that optimizes the health of the baby's nervous system. So, though we can't prove these things, believing in them makes sense.
Yes. Although so much has been studied about stress, we're talking about toxic stress.
That we can prove. That's proven.
Pregnancy, which by a normal deduction, here we are in this universe of joy and trust and faith that brings a completely different neurochemistry in us. And of course, it will provide a better receptacle. This woman is a womb, as a nest, and that is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just the absence of the stress chemicals, it's the introduction of the joy chemicals. So the chemicals of joy are just so wonderful. And that's why in your book, and you talk about the ways to bring joy in from singing and dancing and artwork and love, concrete things that people can do, and that floods the body and the fetus with these chemicals of joy.
Yes, you're talking about the 10 golden rules.
The 10 golden rules, absolutely. That's it.
It's a fabulous revision you did for us. You were one of our helpers here.
Yes.
Ioana Mari appreciated so much, this judge from Greece. We're going to have her in one of these interviews. So you are an OBGYN. You have had the trust of many couples, of many women during pregnancy, and you were able to bring that possibility for trust. You were able to foster in these couples this connection with life. What has helped you the most to get them to see the possibility of joy?
I think it started with sort of a simultaneous change within me and my personal spiritual outlook. It started with meeting you so many years ago and having these conversations. It started with understanding almost on a basic level, without the spiritual language, without the spiritual vocabulary. But I understood the science. I understood the science of the stress response, and I understood the science of how fear led to the stress response. And so in my way, because I had that training in meditation through Center for Mind Body Medicine, I could just speak to eliminating fear. And the best way to eliminate fear is, number one, to identify those fears. So having a conversation, there was something very, very powerful having a conversation with a woman either before pregnancy or early in pregnancy and saying, what are you fearful about? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? But also, what are your fears? Mm-hmm. And the fears would be not just about a difficult labor or a difficult delivery or a problem with the baby, but the fears were about, am I going to be a good mother? Am I going to repeat the things that weren't so good about my childhood? Am I going to repeat those errors that my mom did? Is my marriage going to be the same? Am I going to go back to the workforce? So just having conversations about those, is it, right for me to go back to work or not? So just being able to have those conversations is how the process starts. And then, of course, we know the sort of opposite emotion from fear is trust.
Yes, it's true.
And so how do we bring a sense of trust into pregnancy? Because, as we know, as now we've advanced through our lives and worked as providers with many, many people, security is an illusion, right? Things happen. And so making peace with that, finding a belief system that allows you to make peace with uncertainty and bring in trust is an important skill, not just for pregnancy, but for life.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember talking to you about early on was when I had this sort of aha for me, and you're like, yeah, of course, I known that. And that was, pregnancy is an opportunity where the third eye opens, in women. And this is an opportunity for them to introduce spirituality and spiritual growth as part of their reason for living or being on the planet. And this is where the unknown comes in, right? Because what do we know about parenthood? It's filled with uncertainty. And so is pregnancy. And so that's how I believe
Yes.
These concepts get introduced.
They are important. And when you talk about trust, I usually introduce also the idea that here you are talking to me. You're not managing your heartbeat, the work of your kidneys, your blood circulating, what your liver is doing, how your eyes are focusing. You're not worried about your vocal cords. They are at your service. Your body is here.
The body knows how to do this.
Let's celebrate that life. This is important. Now, something you said just at the beginning, Joe, these seem to be such normal concepts, simple ones to go about. But in the School of Medicine, they usually are not part of the curriculum. Perhaps some teachers, more philosophical ones, will bring them. But there is a certain resistance. And it's not because it hasn't been proven. Everybody knows what it is to feel good. The well-being of a pregnant woman. They were babies once. They somehow know it. But there's something in our system that we will not enhance this kind of subtlety. And it would be so good for students to know that.
Yes, and it's so disappointing. And I have spent my career dedicated to spreading this information amongst my OB colleagues, and they understand it. When I speak, I get wonderful responses, but it's very hard for official organizations to get involved and spread this information throughout their organization for reasons that I find are still unclear. I don't know the reason for the resistance, but I do know the resistance is there.
Yeah, I remember Dr. Brazelton. He finally came through and had us accept that the baby is someone. There's a person in there, but the baby was already born. And sometimes he would go to the same places as APPPAH, and at the time it was PANA, the Association for Prenatal Psychology. I remember him telling journalists, listen to what she's going to tell you. But he himself wouldn't say it. He had already gone so far into the admission that a baby is someone already, not just a little blurb of stuff that poops and sleeps. Whew, but it takes forever. And
yeah, the pediatricians are a little ahead of the obstetricians. And I think one of the reasons is that you can tell pretty quickly that when you look at a baby as a person, you give it personhood, that the baby immediately starts to behave differently. So it gets positively reinforced. With pregnancy, it's almost like a black box for 9 months. You just don't have any real answers for 9 months.
And somehow it resonates with the baby we were in the womb of our own mother. Were we addressed when we were in there? Our tendency will be somehow to be faithful to what we received in the womb, because this is supposed to be the best. My mom is always great. So I will have this tendency, if I was forgotten in the womb because my mother was addressing other things, or if she was suffering, or if she was worried or anguished, when I am worried and anguished, I'm somehow being faithful to what I received at the very beginning. So to be conscious about who we are as birth professionals changes many things. Tell
And
us.
I discuss this with my patients now, with my adult patients that are in their 40s, 50s, or 60s. Every single new patient gets the question, tell me, as best you can imagine it, what was life like for your mother while you were in the womb? And that starts an incredible conversation. And we can link those experiences with personality traits now. You know, what triggered this thought in my head was you're talking now about a mother being too distracted to talk to the baby. And a busy mother, a distracted mother, the babies pick up on that. And sometimes they get this feeling that maybe there's something wrong with them, that they're not good enough because
Yes.
they're not deserving of the mother's attention. Or they end up early on in childhood feeling that they have to be the parent and parent the mother. So there's all sorts of things that come from that. Autoimmune disease can come from that. So it's so important to talk about those issues, even with us as adults.
So more and more pregnancies where the mother is conscious of those principles will bring us a world much more open to beginning to have a new look on the value of every single pregnant mother.
Right. And it will change the next generation, both emotionally, so how they interact with others. They'll be calmer, they will be kinder, they will be better citizens of the planet, and at the same time, they'll be healthier. So,
because health is not that mysterious.
right,
To be sick and get healthy.
right.
From the start.
And
it's this harmony, the harmony you're proning is what is at the origin of health.
right. And so, we all know about the fetal origins of adult disease, for example. So how moms eat and think and feel during pregnancy affects the emotional health, the spiritual health, and the physical health of their offspring up into adulthood. And you were at the UN when we gave that talk about prenatal violence. I mean, about violence against women. And is there an approach during pregnancy that we can use that can reduce violence in the world? And absolutely, you can produce offspring that are less likely to be violent through these exact principles.
I'm going to show you, I'm going to share screen now, and I'm going to show you this very cover of Time magazine.
Yes.
Came out in October 4th in 2010. And we don't usually see a naked woman on the cover of Time. And this is The New Science of Fetal Origins by Annie Murphy-Paul. She spoke at APPPAH, and because she was simply the journalist for science at the time. And that week she was lucky enough that there was no big event on Earth, so that her article could get the cover, because she was pregnant and she had been interviewing people and discovered epigenetics. So epigenetics is our extraordinary green light for prenatal psychology to go ahead. I think it was recognized officially worldwide in 2008. Of course, we've been speaking about it since the 90s. But would you tell us a little bit how this understanding of epigenetics has helped us into this certainty that we can disseminate this understanding of prenatal life being so important?
Sure. So what epigenetics tells us is that genes are not our destiny. We always used to think that if you had a genetic predisposition for a particular trait, you would develop that trait. And what we now know is that that is no longer the case. And that lifestyle, and by lifestyle, what I mean is what we think, feel, and do, can change the expression of our genes such that our genes are not our destiny. So in terms of simple things, you can have a genetic predisposition for heart disease. You can have a genetic predisposition for cancer. But if you pay attention to your lifestyle, what you think, how you feel, and how you act, then you can change the expression of those genes. And that's also true for things like the BRCA gene, where we believe if you're diagnosed as BRCA positive, we somehow think, or whoever gets that diagnosis thinks, I'm going to get cancer. And the fact is that you can actually change the expression of that, because without even knowing much about somebody, if they're BRCA positive, only about 15 or 20%, or not only, but 15 or 20% of those people won't get the cancer. So what is it about those 15 or 20%? Let's try to get in that group and not be in the group that gets the cancer. And we can change that expression through different behaviors. And when it comes to pregnancy, the same is true with predispositions and genetic predispositions for things like depression or other mental health issues, that we can change the way we respond to stress. We can change our emotions based on our prenatal experience and our stress response. So we can change everything.
Yeah, a pregnant mother, the atmosphere she has around her that she creates by who she is will somehow orchestrate how this genetic material will be responsible for some things being manifest and others not. This is very interesting.
It's so powerful. And interestingly, there's a paradoxical negative effect where people or women can feel overwhelmed, like, oh no, I have to manage this pregnancy the right way. Otherwise, I can do horrible things to my child. And so we have to not allow that to happen. We have to say every little thing that you do can have a positive, great effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Every source of joy. I usually tell them to talk with the 4 elements. If nothing is working that day, at least under the shower, some relationship with the beauty and the deliciousness of water, or you
water is so important. And we know about Emoto's work with the water, and I remember when I first found out about that, and then I realized that the baby lives in amniotic fluid, which is water, and how important that environment is. And so, just being in the shower and rubbing the belly and saying prayers or sending love, how important and significant that is.
I love it. And about the trust. We trust biology. When we trust biology, we get more near to life. I remember I did some time of a nursing school, and when the woman is in a fertile moment in her menses, if you examine a little part of it with a microscope, the secretion, you see like fern, like like sometimes fern in the forest. And recently I learned that amniotic liquid, amniotic fluid, also see that you can fern the vagina secretion to see if there is a leak. This is amazing. So that image that we know so well, that fern that grows in forests, is so beautiful. So it's a luxury for the sight. This means fertility at its best. Life is creating itself inside us. Wow. You see, that sense of wonder, I wish that for every pregnant woman, no matter what she's going through, to find moments during the day that she has that sense of wonder and wish for her baby, a future adult, a gorgeous life.
Yes. So true. What a great summary.
Yeah. Have you found women or couples who think of their babies as future adults? Is that an easy idea for you in your profession?
No, no.
Yeah, we
And
resist.
the way I bring up that conversation um, is either just what you asked, do you ever see or imagine your child as an adult? And usually I get a no. And then I say, okay, so as an exercise, let's do that. Um, and we'll breathe together, have them close their eyes, and I'll say, so what comes to you now as you imagine this child as an adult? What do you see? What do you feel? Is it an emotion? Is it a color? Is it the child actually as an adult? What is it? And everyone comes up with different things.
Yeah, it's great because they don't need much, a little stimulation. And
A little guidance, and they're there. And I will tell you that having done this, I can't even count how many times, it's always been a positive experience. And they always feel more connected. And I always encourage them to do this as many times as they like, um, more than once a day or every day or whatever. But I encourage them to do it.
I wish for a culture for all of us, a Western and Oriental culture that fosters those ideas. It isn't the case. You take birth, for instance, labor. In any movie, they seem to have only one consultant in Hollywood. Because for kissing, for lovemaking, for arguing, they have extraordinary different examples in so many movies. But labor, it's always something almost deplorable. This woman screaming, and okay, we can have that. Oh, perhaps Mamma Mia #2 had a beautiful birth, but usually birth is something so difficult. My daughter, when she's with me at the movies, she puts something in front of my eyes. Mommy, don't watch. Because it's unimaginative. And nothing is more extraordinary than a birth. And I've never seen one like the other. So our culture towards birth, towards pregnancy, could use some help, couldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because you brought up, romance and physicality. There is a place for romance and physicality during labor.
Oh, yes.
Um, and that's, something to talk about. All of the midwives I've ever met know about that. And that's who I learned about this from, that actually kissing can relax and open the cervix and
Yes,
help. And
oxytocin.
absolutely, absolutely. But also, so it's a combination of oxytocin and the relaxation that happens. And so I learned about that through a midwife. And then I put that into my practice. And so there's so much in that area. And that's just connecting. Then there's the whole physicality piece and sexuality in labor. There's so much there as well.
And this is where babies come from.
Yes.
At the very on start, we're sexual from the get-go.
Yeah.
And at the same time, throughout pregnancy, many schools of mystery or philosophy have asked the disciples to fast a little on this love making, that if they could find other expressions of love, even physical love, that wouldn't be specifically the love making. And I've seen some couples loving this idea, and others almost the reverse, as if the libido was so much enhanced. And I'm very curious as to how the babies live that when they're in the womb, because they don't have any choice than going through the whole process. Do you sometimes address that question with your clients?
I do. I do. And, my personal feeling on this is that I let the couples make that decision. So if they're drawn to be more sexual, that's terrific. If they don't feel like being sexual, that's okay too. And the times that I encourage it would be towards the end of pregnancy, where I'm concerned that pregnancy might go on a little too long, or we want to, sort of start the cervical ripening process. The prostaglandins that are in sperm are very good for the cervix. The oxytocin that comes from nipple stimulation and orgasm are very good. So that's where I encourage it.
Let there be love.
Yes,
That's what I
exactly.
ask them. Let there be love, and keep a place for the sacred, because
Absolutely.
it's so mysterious. Yeah,
Yes.
we will still learn so much. Oh my goodness, so much to learn. I know that we have around the world such an industry of pornography. We
Mm.
have divorced sex from love so much in our current culture. The use of internet for porn has been huge since its inception. And recently, during the lockdown, the porn industry, we're talking about adult porn, nothing
Mhm.
strange, it has made so much money that it contributed lots to the research on COVID. So, wow, I had never heard of what the industry of porn is contributing to,
I
but
never did either.
I heard it. So, and sometimes I wonder if I'm a baby in there and I'm feeling everything, but I don't have a partner. It's different. So I go, because there were two obstetricians, David Chamberlain quotes them in his book, um, The Window to the Womb,
Mhm.
Windows to the Womb. And he says these two obstetricians, husband and wife, she was really pregnant, I don't know, 7, 8 months. And end of the day, they're still in their office and they decide to make love, but she's monitored. And they don't pay attention to what is being monitored. They make love, and at the end, they look at the little stripe. And had this been during labor, they would have done a C-section.
Yes, those
Was,
decreased heart rate. I remember talking with David about that specifically.
and what is your opinion on that?
My opinion on that is it shows that a little bit of a decrease in heart rate is not a problem, that babies can withstand that. And who knows how many times that happens. And so it wasn't so much that there was signs of real fetal distress, but what he found was with orgasm, the heart rate went down. And so most um, most people, when they hear that, are afraid to have an orgasm. And I say, no, don't fear it. It's normal, and the baby's heart rate will return to normal and to health afterwards.
Yeah, and I
So
remember the two orgasms, his and
yeah,
hers, were
yeah,
registered. So
yeah,
there's a witness there.
yeah,
For me, it's a big
yeah.
exclamation mark that we
So
have a
that's my
witness.
interpretation.
Yeah.
It's
And
okay.
David said perhaps the baby was enjoying it. It was his
Yeah,
interpretation. David
yeah,
Chamberlain is one of the founders of prenatal psychology. But
yes.
we got to the part of almost towards the end of the pregnancy. What I would like you to address is this property of pregnancy, of being holographic. Sometimes towards the middle of a pregnancy, something that wasn't correctly completed towards the beginning can still be addressed. There seems to be an atemporality. What is your sense of that? Because this is not doesn't pertain to books of obstetrics, but I am sure that you have already heard some things. The diagnosis here and then no more diagnosis, things can get, let's say, repaired.
Things can change, and that's part of the mystery. And that's, I have seen, um, physical defects spontaneously go away. So the sense of mystery is important to hold on to. And the way I say you should hold on to the sense of mystery is by invoking this sense of surrender.
Yes.
And it's surrender that's the door that this opens, and allows it to happen. And then with that sense of trust that all is okay, because we don't know our divine script. We don't know the script of the baby. And sometimes the baby's teaching us things, and maybe the baby is teaching us, meaning the parents, about trust and about surrender. And then if you can really embrace that, then the need for that little deformity is gone and it disappears. So you can learn that lesson during pregnancy.
This is huge, huge. Now you talk about the sense of surrender. I think it's the only real strength of parents, because it's going to go on for a
There
while.
you go. Exactly.
Try to
And you learn it. If you don't learn it sooner, you learn it later. But you do learn it.
A 5-year-old, then a 15-year-old. Try to control a 25-year-old.
Right.
You'll
Right.
be very anguished. There's no
Yeah.
way you can control.
Yes.
And that surrender of the first orgasm of conception, for me, it's a magical key for the surrender at birth and throughout parenthood, throughout parenting. And this is for both parents. I don't know if every man should be there at the birth of his child. Some men might prefer not to, but the surrender during the first ejaculation, the ejaculation that was the first vital impulse that brought that soul. This is huge. And then as a father, there's a lot of surrender. Oh my.
Exactly.
People are having less children. The young ones, I've talked to students in law, for instance, in Rio de Janeiro, and first year of law. So they were 19, 18 years old. Many of them said no, they don't want to have children. I said, not now, of course, later. He says, no, not for us. And this was a talk about prenatal psychology. Their teacher wanted them to hear that. And I was like, oh, it's like a trend, like a fashion. Let's not have children. Let's not have babies. And I do wonder why. Were they treated with too much daycare or nannies? This was an important university in Rio. I don't know. What do you see in America?
I think birth rates are going down. This is, we hear about this in China, and they're actually actively trying to change that. So it is a worldwide phenomenon. And I think there are many different reasons. I think that most people that I've spoken to believe this is a function of economics. And what I would say is that my perspective is similar to yours, which is maybe this is some of the downstream consequences of the way that they were parented in utero and early on in life. And we'll never know the answer.
No, we never.
When I speak to young adults now, and you can speak to this because you know more young adults that have been consciously conceived and consciously parented, those children or young adults now are interested in having children of their own.
They are. You talked about trust. There's a brother to trust that is hope. It's amazing how every pregnancy brings hope. And this is what at Prenatal Alliance we would love to instill, that hope, that trust, but also that responsibility regarding an extraordinary mission.
Yes.
Parent, oh my.
Yes. Yes. So true.
And if we are parents already prenatally, it helps so much the parenting later on. And if preconception, we have already opened ourselves up for welcoming a being, it's a huge investment, but makes it so much easier later on. This is how I see it. We demand so much from a pregnant woman sometimes, but that investment, like Marcy Axens would say, invest in infant structure, because the dividends will be huge.
Absolutely.
Well, it's good to be in the same wavelength. Would you like to add something to our listeners about your life and Prenatal Alliance?
Just that this is such important work. It's God's work. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here where everyone understands the importance here, but let me just congratulate you, this audience, for your hard work in spreading this message out to the world. And I just wish you Godspeed.
This is great. Godspeed to you too, Joel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.